Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
To Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from the Mac 6 Entrepreneurial Center right here in Tempe, Arizona, where we help build businesses and connect you with the right people. And today we are not only connecting you with the right people, we're also building a little town off of the great history and the success that they've already had for all the years that they've been contributing, not only to Arizona, but to the world. Please help me welcome to the studio a few key people who are important to the town of Miami, Arizona. With us in the studio today is my dear friend, Evelyn Vargas. She is the Economic Development Director for the town of Miami. Welcome back to the studio.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's been, has it been over a year since you were in here with Ruth, Ellen, and Tim with Pin Drop Travel Trailers? It's been over a year.
It's coming up on
right?
Pretty close to a year, I would say.
So for our viewers and listeners, Evelyn and I got to meet when a friend over at the Arizona Commerce Authority, Jamie Cure, invited you to come in and get to know me. And as you and Tim and Ruth Ellen talked about the town of Miami, I just thought, oh my gosh, I've passed through there, right? And just in a flash, because it's only a mile long. And I really wanted to get to know you based on your stories and the joy that you guys talked about your hometown. And so since then, I've been up there to get to know you. I'll be back up there again on Sunday to be part of a business coalition. And came up for the Bullion Plaza 100-year celebration at the museum. And then we even did a mini interview with, I think it was 12 business owners.
Yes.
Not too long ago. I had the pleasure of doing a pop-up broadcast. So thank you for letting me be part of your world. I love the fact that I get to let more people know about the great work that you guys are doing. So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having us. And so many people tell me, they didn't even realize we had a downtown area. You know, people kind of pass through on the 60 without realizing they can make a left turn at any stoplight there on the 60 and get to our downtown area.
If you haven't been through the town of Miami in a while, I really encourage you to do that. There are a lot of really neat Main Street shops that are open and ready for business, and some neat new businesses coming in. And it's a great way to support local businesses. Evelyn, you brought somebody with you today, and I have had a chance to hear Dr. Ramos speak at an event not too long ago. Richard Ramos is the incoming superintendent for the town of Miami Unified School District. I hope I got that accurate or good enough, right? People get the gist.
It's good enough.
And I remember when I was listening to you speak not too long ago when Evelyn invited me to be a guest. Having been a former educator, a third grade teacher and assistant principal, later on a vice president for a company that was a charter school company, I really understand your heart. I think I do for kids and education and workforce development. And I would love for you both to have an opportunity to introduce yourselves, of course. We have up to an hour for this segment. Really, both of you have such rich history with the town of Miami and the role in which you serve your community. I would love for you to speak to that, because I know for you, you were gone for a while, Dr. Ramos. So would you please introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners, and then we'll have Evelyn do the same afterwards.
Absolutely. So I'm Richard Ramos, and so excited to be here. Glad to work alongside of Evelyn. Evelyn has a really rich history in the town of Miami, and so being back in the area has been phenomenal for me. So just to give you a little bit of background, I've been in education now for 28 years. So I served as teacher, and that was a 7-year stand, and had a great time. Really engaged with kids. And developed a passion. From there, I went into the administrative field. So I served as an assistant principal, served as a principal for 12 years. So that's where my longest tenure happens to be. And then I went back to school at Arizona State University, got my doctorate in 2018, and decided that I wanted to try district level leadership.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know, right? But my doctorate was in leadership and innovation. And so what's so exciting about that is positions were popping up all over the place in regards to innovation, particularly in terms of innovative learning. And so I found a job in the Roosevelt School District in 2019, which had the title of Executive Director of Innovation and Learning. Did that for 4 years, but I always knew that I was going to return to my hometown. And so returning back to the Globe Miami area, I didn't recognize that I was going to be even more passionate about what I'm doing. I feel like the last year that I've had the opportunity to work at the Miami Unified School District, over the last 10 months has probably been the most meaningful work that I've ever engaged in, because I'm connected to kids who look exactly like me. And so it's been really important. And one of the things that I did, like it was on the top of the agenda, was I reached out to the town of Miami and said, hey, look, we can't do this without each other. We have to work together. I need to support you and the business that you're doing in the town of Miami, and you need to support us, the business that we're doing educationally. And so the partnership has been really incredible. I have gone to most of the town meetings. The only meetings that I've missed have been those where we have our own governing board meetings. And they have come to our business partner cafes and many of our school events in order to like partnership and support each other. It's been unique, but I'm sure that we're going to uncover a lot of the things that we've done together. So I think that's a great point, a great place to go ahead and transition.
Such a great introduction. Thank you. I feel like I could just leave the studio and let the two of you do this without me. And with that in mind, really don't feel like you have to take any breaks to include me. I'm ancillary to this conversation. So I'm just here to share in the wisdom and the expertise and, of course, the joy and longevity and trajectory that you're creating on behalf of your community. So thanks again for being here, Dr. Ramos. All right, Evelyn, who are you and how did you land in this role?
Who am I? I was actually born in Miami, Arizona, in the old hospital. It was called Miami Inspiration Hospital. And after two mining companies that decided to build that hospital. So my roots go from the very beginning in Miami, Arizona. I wanted to compliment Dr. Ramos for his passion, his drive, his energy. I wish we could bottle that up and spread it throughout the state of Arizona. We would really have a different education system if everybody took on his passion and
Agreed.
his love for what he does. A little bit about myself is, after graduating from Northern Arizona University, I have degrees in business administration, computer information systems, secondary and elementary education. When our youngest son finally got into first grade, I was a stay-at-home mom before that. But when my youngest son got into first grade, I thought, you know what, I would best serve my community and my family if I was a teacher. And so I went into teaching for 15 years. I also coached volleyball and tennis. After my son graduated, I stayed on an extra year and I thought, I think I want to make a career change. So I went to work at a mining company, BHP Billiton, for a couple of years. And if anybody's familiar with a copper mining town, we are based on the rise and fall of copper prices. People's jobs depend on the market of copper. And so copper hit an all-time low. I was laid off. A good friend of mine said, hey, there's a job open at the hospital. So I went to work at the local hospital, Cobra Valley Regional Medical Center, and got advanced to their chief experience officer. So I was part of their executive team for 12 years. I decided to resign from that position, and Dr. Dorothy from Miami Unified School District asked me if I would be the special education director. I said, sure. I think that's something that I would like to do. So I was in that position for about a year and a half, and heard that the economic development director position was going to open up in Miami. So I didn't sign my contract, just hoping that I would get this job. And it has been a passion of mine for many, many years to try to help Miami come back to not only a historic state, but also a tourist, uh, full of energy type community and preserve the historic parts of Miami, but also bring a new flavor, that tourists would love to come and visit. So that's what I've been doing for the last 7 months.
Okay, so it hasn't been a year.
No,
That's
it
why you knew that I was wrong,
hasn't.
because it hasn't even been a year that you've been in that
Yeah.
role. And I think you'd already been in that role for at least a couple
I'm not
months.
sure if I had just started
Okay.
or just prior to starting.
Well, that's a
So,
great timeline,
yeah,
and really
so-
impressive. I love that, we have several educators sitting in the studio today. For our listeners, I was a third grade teacher and assistant principal in Kyrene School District here in the Valley, and then went on to become a VP for Pinnacle Charter High Schools that served the Arizona, the full state. So that's how I was so excited about listening to both of you speak, and really some of the ideas around education and how some of the money can come back based on some neat things going on that I hope we'll have a part 2 at some point about, or maybe a part 3 about Miami to talk about some of the innovation that's happening within businesses. So, what has been, from your perspectives, some of the challenges that the town of Miami has been faced with? And Evelyn, it might sound like you're going to repeat yourself a little bit based on our conversation with Tim and when we were here all those months ago, but I can't assume that any of our listeners really listened to that segment, and they may not be familiar with what's going on. So either of you can speak to this from your perspective. What do you think some of the challenges have been over the years that the town of Miami face, and why those challenges?
I can start. I graduated from Miami High School, taught there for many years, and very familiar with the town of Miami too. Back in the 60s, the mid 60s, the schools that were once in the town of Miami, particularly the high school, was moved from the town of Miami to an area about 3 miles east of Miami. And anytime you create a geographic change like that and you separate units like that, it's hard to stay engaged. And that's why when Dr. Ramos came along and started his business cafe partnership venture, I was so happy because he was connecting us back. And I think that is a great collaboration is always such a key in any successful venture. One thing that the town of Miami is working on right now is a trail system. So connecting the schools back to the town. We can't physically pick up the school and get it back in Miami or vice versa, but we can do some things that would help not only education and connecting the 2 units back together, but it'll be great for the health of our community also. So we're hoping to do a study with ADOT and connect us physically again.
Love it. Dr. Ramos, anything to add?
Oh my goodness, do I have things to add? So I just wanted to share that, as I'm hearing Evelyn speak, there's so much pride that is generating inside of me, so much enthusiasm, because I think that our philosophies are very similar, and I need to share like what I mean by that and kind of unpack that. So I believe in place-based learning. And if anybody knows place-based learning, that is physical landscape and community engagement. And so why that's so important is because there's 3 different parts. And so it goes hand in hand with her philosophy and what the town of Miami is considering. So first and foremost, there's a physical landscape that our students need to understand about the physical landscape. They need to understand what grows there and also what the industry happens to be there. And so if we can use that as a foundation for learning, then it's possible for us to have a baseline. So that way we can develop all of our subject areas in the system, in the school system, that is, in order to start from that foundation. The second thing is there are pockets all over the town of Miami, and everyone has a story. So we need to understand the historical landscape of the area. We need to get out of the school building because learning happens beyond the 4 walls. And also, learning is collaborative, it's community based. So, therefore, our kids need to get out and engage with their community and learn what those stories are, and then come back to the school and write about the experiences. It's our students that should be generating like all of the articles that are produced in the Globe Miami Times, in the Silver Belt. They need to be publicized, they need to be heard, they need voices, they need to be connected to their community. And then finally, there's also a geographical landscape that the students need to understand. They need to understand, how do the living coincide with the non-living and produce the area which we call the town of Miami. When the students have those three components, we're going to have one of the richest education systems in, I'm not only saying in all of rural Arizona, but all of the United States. If we can understand that and how significant that happens to be, this is the ideal partnership to have. And most definitely, what I saw happen with our business partner cafes, and it was only part one this year, it's going to get better than that. But I saw us bring 40 business partners together for the first time, and people interacting with one another and recognizing the human capacity that we have in this small community. It grew from our very first one, where we only had 40 business partners, to having about 50 business partners at our second. And our last one, we didn't even have space for them. There were 70 business partners that were collaborating with people standing. And so we're like, oh my goodness, we outgrew our venue. So therefore, we're going to have this, have to like start having these business partner cafes in our large facility, which is our cafeteria. We can't have them here anymore. And so it's been a phenomenal experience watching, because people are recognizing that we have to coincide in this community and support education to move the whole town forward. So it has been one of the most incredible experiences. And I'll tell you why I'm so passionate about it. It lands differently when I'm in my hometown and I actually get to see the students charged by it. What we did last time with our student presentations, and that was the focus of our business partner cafe, it was unprecedented. Our kids presented like projects in which they developed, and it was based on the problem that they solved within their own community.
What is some of the feedback that you're getting back from the business community?
Well, the business community can't wait for the next one.
When are we doing it?
Yeah, because what has happened is mindsets are shifting, from like, we don't know how to do this, to like, how do we reach across the aisle and how do we partner with others, to, oh, like, we can do this. It takes effort, it takes dedication, and it takes hard work. And people are recognizing that they have the human capital within their own town in order to make some of these things happen. And so it's been an incredible experience. We share spots in our local radio stations so that way we can communicate about what we're doing and when our next events are going to happen. If we work collaboratively, that's more people, because everybody knows that word of mouth is still the greatest form of advertisement. People are talking, there's a buzz, and everybody is recognizing that things are shifting, things are changing, and it's on the upswing.
And I see Richard mentioned human capacity, and I think this swing is moving towards human responsibility, and I think I see that shift. There's a lot of people, business owners that, they go to work every day and they think that's what their responsibility is. But, if we interconnect with each other and collaborate, we can just move so much more. And that's why Richard is so key in the position he is in. And that's what he's trying to do. In regards to education with our students, when I was growing up in Miami, my dad worked 4 years in the smelter, and I didn't even know what he did. I just knew he picked up his lunchbox that my mom packed every morning or every afternoon or in the middle of the night, depending on what shift he was on. And he'd go to work, he'd come home, and I just really didn't know what he did. When I started teaching, I would take my marketing kids. I taught marketing, so I would take my marketing kids up and tour the mine back when they allowed that. And they were fascinated. They had no idea what went on top of the hill. a lot of the kids were okay after graduation. Well, I'll just get a job at the mine, not realizing that mining operations, uh, especially copper, moving forward is going to be so critical to the world economy. And there are jobs in there's metallurgists, geophysicists, chemists, planners. We talk about a lot of these jobs that are highly educated individuals, and that's what we need to expose our kids to because it's in their back door. So, I have some strategies on that. I'll talk
well,
to
la-
Richard later.
well, do you want to speak to some of them now, or those are not on
They're-
air
Yeah,
strategies?
not on air
Okay.
strategies yet.
Well, so can we have more of these? Because there's so much to talk about.
I would
honestly.
be honored to assist that.
So I just wanted to share with you a little bit of history that has really impacted like the direction that I've gone in. So I was born and raised in the area as well. And so I went away to Arizona State University to attend college, and I never returned to the area. It was 33 years later that I returned to the area. So I just wanted to share this, that when you leave the Miami Globe area, you're really proud to be from a copper mine. And you leave with this great sense of pride, and you talk about it everywhere you go. Like, I'm from a copper mining town, because we know the industry is really important to the rest of the world. And so one of the things that I think is really critical here is that most recently we had a conversation with Freeport McMoran, which is one of the copper mines in the area. And they had this beautiful presentation, and they shared, of course, what their philosophy happens to be, what safety looks like up there, what careers are available. And there was a lot of analytics shared with us. They made $1.4 billion in the last year. And so it was great to hear all of that. But it still was a mystery to me, because by the time that I was in high school, I did not get the opportunity to go and tour what happens up on the hill. And so I, for 33 years, walked away with this great sense of pride, knowing it was still mystical. What happened up on top of the hill, I did not know. So when I returned and I was in this presentation for Freeport McMoran, I had to ask, hey, we need to focus on an educational aspect, because it is our kids that happen to be the pipeline. Our kids in our school system can be your scientists. They can be your welders. They can be your construction workers. They can be your miners. What does the education pillar look like? Because I don't want kids to walk away from their experience, K-12, and not know what happens on the hill. I want them to be able to know what a miner does, so that way they can go out and tell other people, and we can be your pipeline that's direct to your workforce. And so those are the types of things that we're questioning, and those are the types of things that we're going to work on in order to support education and the existence of our town.
Yeah. So he's kind of hinting to what I have planned, but it's going to take everyone. It's going to take the collaboration of every individual, every mining company, not only in our area but beyond our area. I had the opportunity to attend the Phoenix Global Economic Forum these past couple of days, and they were speaking on the highest level of economics, imports and exports, and just all those different topics that makes the world economy work. And the word copper came up about 20 times.
Fantastic.
And we are sitting in the heart of copper.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that the whole philosophy of education in Miami is shifting, and this is where we're headed. We just developed a strategic plan, which is 5 years, and Evelyn has had the opportunity to view it, because we took it to our stakeholders through every iteration, because their feedback has been so important in helping us develop that. And so here's where we're headed. She's talking about the World Economic Forum and like, what is most important. Here's what we're recognizing in education: creativity, critical thinking, teamwork, personalization. All of those things are so critical to what we're doing today. And if we're not like working toward building students with that understanding, we're doing them a severe injustice. We need to develop those skills so that way when our kids go out into the community, they know how to be productive members of not only the Miami Globe area, but also the world market, because it's competitive out there. Things are changing. Our kids need to like be able to be creative, critical think. They also need to, of course, work as part of a team. Individual work is no longer like working. What we need to do is figure out like how do we cooperate with each other in order to move our initiatives forward. So we're working on developing that. It is going to take some time, but we will get to a space where we actually focus on the things that are important to the World Economic Forum.
I love it. I want to give a shout out to Arizona Technology Council, who's been doing their show here at Phoenix Business Radio X for almost 5 years now. In fact, this month, I think we celebrate our 50th episode. And I don't know if you're familiar with Arizona Technology Council or not, but Steve Zylstra and I co-host that show together. And their foundation, their nonprofit, is called STEM Institute or SciTech Institute. And it focuses on really K-12 education and not just kids interested in STEM and getting them very interested in sciences and mathematics and that sort of thing, but the very things that you just spoke about, Dr. Ramos, making sure that these kids can collaborate, they can communicate, that they're leaders, they're self-thinkers, they're self-starters, they can solve problems, that sort of thing. So if you haven't had an introduction to that organization yet, I would like to make that introduction for you. We passed their team when we were walking through the co-work space on our way into this room. They sit just outside here. And I know Steve would love to learn more about what you all are up to so that he can get you connected with some of the largest big tech and even our hometown heroes in tech here in Arizona to continue to help you further your mission. So let's make sure we do that after we're off air. Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you mind talking about the presentations, Evelyn, that you saw the kids do, and then I can go ahead and back end it?
Sure. This last presentation that Dr. Ramos had, all the students. Let me mention this first too. The kids always serve this miraculous, beautiful lunch, and it's done by Miami High School culinary students under the direction of Mr. Hill. And it is this last time they served pozole. I was like amazed, and it was so delicious. So just a shout out to that team. But there were several different groups of students that took a look at the Miami High School campus, Miami Junior Senior High campus, and they thought, let's look at areas that could be improved here on campus. And so these presentations they put together, one of them was, we need to develop a swimming pool on campus. And so they had their designs laid out. They figured out where they would put this pool and how much to charge and just so much detail. And it came from them and what they saw on campus. Another one wanted to create like a garden space, between the two buildings. The other team, I can't remember what the other team, there were about 3 teams, but it was very much critical thinking and thinking about what can we use this space for, which leads into science, technology, all those things. You can see how they were applying all those aspects to their projects. Very, very fascinating what these kids came up with.
So I'm going to back end that because that was the outcome. And it was really incredible to see the students share their presentations, because what the audience doesn't know is some of those students are English language learners. And so for the first time, they're standing in front of an audience and sharing their presentation and how it generated from just an idea to doing the research and actually developing a presentation where they're talking to 70 business partners. And so to go from A to Z was a lot of work and a lot of preparation and a lot of like self-esteem building. And so here's how that originated. So very early in the year, I recognized we had a teacher that didn't have the experience yet in order to manage the classroom and in order to teach effectively. So I latched on to that teacher and I had a conversation with him and started building a relationship with him. And I said, hey, can I start team teaching with you? I said, that's part of my job. I was hired as the director of innovation and learning. I want to work alongside of you, and perhaps you watch and start gathering some tools in your toolbox. Really focus on the strategies, and then you implement them when I'm not in the room. And so we started doing that together. And there was one particular day, even me as a veteran teacher, 28 years of experience, where the kids were just not into the lesson. And we were teaching them about being a good citizen in their own community. It was a social studies lesson, and that was the standard. So I looked at Mr. March and I said, can you play along with me? Can you trust me with this experience? And he said, absolutely. So I said, all right, everybody get your technology out. We want your handheld devices. Get your phones out. I'm going to teach you to be a good citizen, and we're taking a field trip. And the kids were like, what is going on here? So we lined up and I said, remember, you have to respect learning. So you need to be quiet in the hallway, but I want you to go throughout your campus and you lead this field trip. Take us to all the areas on the campus that need to be refined, where renovation needs to happen, or there needs to be some type of improvement. I said, and take as many pictures as possible. I said, but I want you to lead us to those areas. Well, we went to hillsides. We went to places in between buildings where kids did not feel like the landscape was enough, that it wasn't landscaped enough. We went to mallways. We even went to locker rooms, and kids were taking pictures. There were pictures going off every step of the way. Kids still didn't have any idea what we were doing. So after 20 minutes of them leading this field trip, we went back to the classroom. I said, all right, get back into your groups of 4. And I want you to go ahead and take a look at all the pictures and compare pictures that you took. So kids had their phones out. They were comparing pictures. And I said, land on the one that needs the most work. Which problem did you identify that needs the most work? So the kids identified the problem. And then I passed out paper and I said, all right, start to sketch what the new area is going to look like. Use the picture, scale it onto your sketch, and develop that new area. So needless to say, that was the first lesson, and the class had to be extended from there. So eventually we got to a place where the kids used all of the different phases of design thinking. So they worked together and developed that sense of empathy. They defined a real world problem right in their own community. They brainstormed ideas, and then they developed that sketch, which was the first prototype. The next step, probably like 2 or 3 weeks later, was go ahead and develop a list of items that you need to create a model of that. So the kids then made us a list of all materials that we needed to buy. We bought all the materials for them, brought them back to class, and they started to construct 3D models of what this new area would look like. And so then once we had that, then they had to do all the research. If you were to bring this product to life and to sell your idea, what are all the things that you need to know about it so that way you could tell somebody about funding this project? So the kids had to go and do the research. And the last step was for them to actually to develop a presentation. And you know that there's so many different platforms for presentation. They kept portfolios of their work, pictures of the work as they were moving along. They also could do podcasts if they wanted to. They could do a PowerPoint presentation. We had 4 groups that moved really quickly and latched onto the PowerPoint idea. And at that time, we had a business partner cafe coming, and I thought, are the kids ready to present their ideas to the community? And can we get them there within the month? we worked really diligently on getting them there. And so that's what they saw
Mhm.
was 4 different groups presented their projects based on the renovation that they had planned over 8 weeks. It was probably one of the most amazing experience, and I think everybody in the room was jaw dropped as a result of this type of learning.
Mhm.
And we showed this to teachers, and this was a whole class doing this. And do you know that we had teachers doubting that our kids could do this?
Hmm.
They're like, you must have selected the best kids to do this. We're like, no, actually, we didn't. All kids did this, but these were the first 4 to finish. And kids learn at different rates. You don't push them, they finish when they finish. These 4 just happen to be finished now. So these are the 4 that we brought forward. But so there still happens to be that deficit thinking about not all kids can do this. No, this is the new way of learning. At
Mhm.
some point, every single student will be able to learn this way because they're going to be thinking critically, they're going to be creative, they're going to be working as part of a team, and presentation is going to be a part of that process.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what
Mm.
I think of, when I saw the end result of those 4 students, and by the way, they were 8th graders, correct? They were junior high kids, and I was thinking as I was watching their presentations, these are our future architects, these are our future economic developers, these are our future tech tech people, because we have to grab these kids when the interest is there, and the interest is there in their youth. We can't wait till, people are 30 years old and say, "Hey, you wanna try this?" Of course, that can happen, but, if we can capture the hearts of kids and, I guess, have them develop a love, a passion for something, and that's what, Dr. Ramos's activity 100% did.
We're
Go
getting
ahead.
a lot of attention because of it as well. And so I just want to share this because I don't know if anybody in the room is aware of this, but the Diamondbacks reached out to us because they're having a STEM day. And so because they're having a STEM day, they were like, hey, we heard about this project. And, is it possible that you could go ahead and set up a field trip and come to a game, and we're having a STEM dugout? We would like those 4 presentations to be housed in our dugout with the presenters. The kids are going to have an opportunity to talk to spectators about their projects and how they went through the whole process of design thinking in order to share their prototypes that day. So at 11 o'clock, they're going to be making presentations, and then game time starts at 12:40. So their whole entire class is benefiting from these projects, and they're going to get the opportunity with this reward to go to a Diamondbacks game on May 15th, and it's STEM day.
Incredible.
Awesome.
Wow. How can I ask, do you know how that organization found out about the presentation? Word of mouth? Like, I'm always listening to these conversations from a perspective. Okay, good. From a perspective of how can more people hear about and get involved and rally around what you're doing. So what is the story there? And then the next part of that is, who else do you need as a champion in your community?
Yeah. We're talking about collaboration and everyone knowing what everyone else is doing out in the community. I think that's so important. My daughter Anna works for Resolution Copper, and Resolution Copper has a partnership with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And Anna happened to be I think she's attended
She has.
every cafe partnership there's been, and she reached out and said,
Awesome.
"Hey, we got to get this project down to the Arizona Diamondbacks." And, I think about the missed opportunities that rural kids have, and I'm not sure, maybe Dr. Ramos could answer this, the discrepancy between funds, what do, metropolitan school districts have versus rural districts? I know we struggle in Miami financially, and so a lot of times we have to be innovative and creative and do things a different way, but try to accomplish the same goals
Mhm.
as metropolitan areas.
So there is a major discrepancy, and that's one of the reasons I came back to the hometown. Is because I wanted to level the playing field. Uh, if you learn anything from me, I'm all about fair and equitable learning and making sure that kids have access. And so, um, you know, first and foremost, looking at our buildings are not set up for collaboration. Today, schools are being built with storefront windows that open up like an accordion so that way you can reach across and work with the class next door and work in a community oriented environment. And so I believe that our kids should be privy to the same thing. And so all of the collaboration and community based learning that we're embarking on, it's strategic, it's intentional, because that's the type of learning that is happening here. So that's the first discrepancy, is we need to create innovative learning spaces with the buildings that we have. And so if that means like learning outside of the four walls, if that means learning across the parking lot, so that way we can develop that agriculture land that is across the way, that's what we have to do. We have to learn in environments like that. We have to get kids out, and we need to get kids collaborating. And so that's the first thing. And then also, there's also funding that's available based on the number of students, based on your enrollment. So M&O is all dependent upon how many students do we service. We get about $9,000 per child, and that's where the bulk of our funding comes from. How schools down here get additional funding, though, is through their tax levies. In addition to that, there's an opportunity to go out for bond funds through elections, depending on what your bond value happens to be. In Miami, we don't have those opportunities as much because our property value is not the same as the property value here. So that's a huge discrepancy. When I was in Roosevelt School District, we went out for a $90 million bond, and it was passed. The voters approved it. So I had $90 million while I was working there for 4 years to improve every building. In Miami, we wouldn't have that opportunity because our tax base is just not the same. But our kids should be privy to the same learning environments, and they should have access to the same type of learning that is happening throughout the United States.
Yeah. And I just think about the importance of Miami, Arizona, not only to the local, state, national, and the world economy. I like to say that Miami was responsible for lighting the world and connecting the planet. We could turn every electronic device off today, right now in this room. And if we didn't have copper, this is how it would be. Copper is so vital. And, for a small community like Miami and Globe to not have the resources they need when we have such a vital industry within a mile of our communities is something that needs to be addressed.
And Dr. Ramos, you spoke to just the amount of money that those mines are, the wealth that's there. Within your town, it makes sense to continue to have these conversations and see if we can't, redirect some of that to support the community and the growth.
I just want to let you know, like, it is such a passion of mine to make sure that our kids have access to the same type of learning and the same type of environments that we will work toward, combating that deficit thinking. Our students can be creative, they can be critical thinkers. They can present ideas, they're capable of brainstorming, they're capable of developing prototypes. Like, we can do that from kindergarten through 12th grade. And so that's the first step, letting people know that we can. Like, we've got to battle deficit thinking. That can be no longer. We have to think with an asset-based mindset. What are the talents our kids do have? And, what does it take to have a growth mindset? It's effort, dedication, and hard work. Who doesn't have that? We all have the capacity to put that in place. And then the next, equity. We have to focus on equity. And we all have to put our minds together. It's going to take our parent community working with us. It's going to take our teachers working with us, our students, and our business partners as well. They're critical in making sure that our students have access. If our community is making $1.4 billion, we need to figure out a way. How do we share in that? So that way we can support our buildings. Our buildings can become collaborative. So that way we are producing the scientists, the engineers, the welders, the electricians. All of those things are critical to what we do in our industry. How do we build that while a child is young in our education system? We all need to ask ourselves from the Globe Miami community, how do we build that? And how do we all work together to get that?
Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to mention one more group, our alumni, for both schools is so vital in the growth because, you grow up attached to a community and that stays with you the rest of your life. And
whether you stay in the area or you leave the area, I've
Exactly.
been a witness to listening to a handful of speakers from your community, not only at the Bullion Plaza Museum celebration, but even several different conversations and tours that you've taken us on. Folks who have grown up and have spent at least their early years in Miami love that town. And whether they are local and they've stayed local or they've returned and now they're living like yourself, Dr. Ramos, it doesn't leave you. And people are great advocates for the very things we're talking about here, for the success of the town and again the future of these kiddos.
I have to tell you a story that is so critical to like you talking about the Alumni Association and how strong that happens to be. I was at a networking opportunity last night. The Chamber of Commerce for the Miami Globe area, they provide us with opportunities like once a month. And so last night I went to a place called Silver Tap where they hosted the networking opportunity. And while I was there last night, they did a raffle, and the raffle was for like I think half of the pot of money. So therefore, many people like are interested in like winning, winning dollars, right? So half of the pot came out to like $80 last night. And so the gentleman that won, so I had the opportunity to hand over the $80 to him. And he said, "So you're the new superintendent in the Miami Unified School District?" And I said, "Yes." He gave me $20 and he says, "This is for the MHS class of 1950 because my father was a member of that class." He pulled out another $20 and gave it to me and said, "And this is for the class of 1953. He said, "So make sure the Alumni Association gets this $20 as well because it's for the class of 1953 because my mother was a part of that class." So it's amazing. So things are looking different, and we just need to work together to figure out how do we make learning fair and equitable for every child so that way they're moving along on the continuum to progress, and how do we work together in order to fund that. I'm not going to go down without our buildings looking collaborative, our buildings reinforcing like the type of work that we want our students to do. My goal is for every single student to be a productive member of their community and abroad. Therefore, how do we create those experiences while they're young, kindergarten through 12th grade?
Yeah. Part of the Phoenix Global Economic Forum, they spoke about the difference between North America and China, for example. And China has everything so structured. They are so organized in their education, in their imports, their exports, their manufacturing, etc. Just years and years ahead of the United States, Canada, Mexico. And the topic was how it's not to put down China, it's how can we catch up, and like Dr. Ramos was saying, we may not have all the monetary resources right now, but how do we get these kids motivated, engaged, and moving forward? And that's what has to happen because China kind of has the market on how they are doing things. And so, not only in Miami, Arizona, but across the United States, we need to step it up in education.
Yeah. Dr. Ramos, you spoke to just having a growth mindset. And one of the things that I do each year is come up with a theme for myself. And this year's theme has been to stay curious. And that's really what I think we're talking about, right? How do we, as a community and as individuals, stay curious? So when I'm in a conversation that doesn't feel very good and I start having some judgment or some opinions about, my role in that conversation, I have to kind of shift the way that I'm thinking and approaching that conversation and that individual or that group and become curious about like, well, what if I didn't think I had all the answers? What if they were right? or what if there's some new way of doing things and finding a solution together that none of us have thought of before. And that's what I'm hearing throughout the pockets of the stories that you're sharing, is that's what you're building as a community. And there's a saying that we are the culmination of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? I'm sure you've heard that. Our kiddos, at least my 16-year-old, spends a lot of time looking at his phone and following influencers on Instagram and that sort of thing, and gaming. And he's also an athlete and an honor student. So, well-rounded kid. However, when I've had him look at his life and who is influencing it, I'm only one of those people. He's got some great coaches, but also these people that he's never even met, that he looks to through his phone and pays attention to, they are influencing him. So again, when I think about your community, the more you bring the businesses together with these students, I kind of imagine even the business owners beginning to think bigger, to become more curious, and then to help influence and shape where you're headed. So hats off to you guys for all the great things that you're doing. What have we not thought to share with our listeners and viewers? We have just a few minutes left before we close up today's segment. You are welcome back again. I've already told Evelyn that, as we've become friends and really want to champion the success for Miami and not only our each other and our families. What else do our listeners and viewers need to know about you guys and really your mission?
Would you like to start, Evelyn?
Oh, sure. I think a big piece that we sometimes miss is the historic value of a community. And I just learned this story not too long ago from Joe Sanchez, former mayor for the town of Miami, also a Miami High School graduate. And he was telling me, I asked him, hey, Joe, how come Red Springs Canyon is called Red Springs Canyon? Because its official name is Chisholm Avenue. And he said, well, that's where the Slavics used to live when they came to mine in the area. That was their area. And they would import grapes once a year to make wine. And so all of them up the street would make the wine. And then at the end of the day, they would all clean their wooden barrels out and with water and then just pour it down the street. And the street would run red because they were cleaning out their red wine barrels. And so hence the name Red Springs Canyon. And I think, remembering where you came from is so important, but always know where you're going to. And I think, we can look backwards too long, but it's important to know where we've come from and keep your eye facing forward at the same time.
Awesome. Right?
Yes.
Here's what I would like to share as well. In addition to Evelyn's philosophy, I would also like to share that I no longer want you to think of our kids as kids at risk. We're an underserved community, but we are not kids at risk. We are kids at hope. And we're kids at hope because we recognize that the more adults a child has in their life, the more successful they're going to be. And we compare that to 4 aces. There's an ace of hearts, who's the parent. There's an ace of spades who holds high expectations for kids. There's an ace of clovers who knows at least 3 characteristics about a child. And there's also the ace of diamonds who also supports and reinforces the child, especially when it comes to success. In addition to that, we're all about building pathways. We have to, as adults, make sure that kids set goals for themselves, because when they set goals and they write them down, they're more likely to reach them. Second, we need to give them the pathway in order to reach that goal. And as adults, we need to build their agency in order for them to get there. And then The last thing that I want to say is the reason I share Kids at Hope is because when you think of hope, it gives them the opportunity to look forward. They're hopeful about something. And there are 4 destinations that every child thinks about. There's home and family and what that's going to look like as an adult. There's also education and career and what that's going to look like, hobbies and recreation, and then there's also community and service. If we can get kids while they're young to think about those things and set some goals and then return back to the present and help them get there, imagine the world and how it's going to change for them. And this is how impactful it happens to be in order to be a Kids at Hope. As an adult and treasure hunter, I'm committed to search for all the talent, skills, and intelligence that exist in all children and youth. I believe that all children are capable of success, no exceptions. Why do I remember that? Because that's how important it is to remind students about the treasures that they have.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Wonderful. Wow. Yes, we will be back to do this again, no doubt. And I'm looking forward to not only sharing this as a podcast on all the major third-party platforms, Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, all the places that we land, but also getting this conversation in its entirety and the little snippets into the hands of some of the decision makers who can continue to help influence and shape and run alongside what you're doing. So thank you both for sharing your time with us this morning. Evelyn, I know I've been blessed with an opportunity to come and take a tour up in Miami a couple of times. Mm-hmm. For our listeners and viewers who are curious about learning more, how can they stay in touch with you and where do you recommend they go for information? What does that look like for folks who are not quite familiar with the town of Miami yet?
Anyone can reach me via email, economicdirector@miamiaz.gov, or they can just stop by the town hall, 500 West Sullivan Street in Miami, and just ask for Evelyn Vargas.
Wonderful. Dr. Ramos, how do people get to run alongside you and your students, and what is it that you're looking for from our business community here in Arizona?
So I'm looking for the ongoing collaboration. And then, of course, if anybody knows of resources that we can connect with in order to support children, I'm all about that. You can always find me at 4739 East Regis Road in Miami, 85339. And then also my email address is rramos@miamiusd40.org. I invite the community in. I love to meet people outside in the community. Coffee shops are my favorite. Let's dialogue. Let's figure out how do we make learning fair and equitable for every single child.
And can folks outside of Globe Miami come and participate in these cafes, the business cafes, or you really want to kind of keep that local?
They already do.
Oh.
Yeah. So we have people traveling from Phoenix to partner with us. I'm telling you, it's a real learning experience, and we can compete with our counterparts in regards to partnerships and collaboration.
For sure. Oh my goodness. Such a rich conversation. Thank you both for your time again. You've been listening to Phoenix Business Radio, broadcasting live from Max 6 Entrepreneur Center right here in Tempe, Arizona. Some media lean left, some lean right, and we lean the town of Miami and K-12 education. Until next time, I'm Karen Nowicki. Thanks for listening.